Season Baji!
In this video, I've returned to the outside in order to review Brandon Sanderson's newest book, Rhythm of War. So Rhythm of War is a Cosmere story, which takes place in the Stormlight Archive series, specifically. So just a quick spoiler-free review. This book is really, really good. So that's a very, very quick review. It's a fucking good book. Watch it. Read it. But if we want to get a bit more specific with the spoiler-free stuff, this book, it has a very slow build. There's not a lot of action, not a lot of big like pitched battles or anything, although there is a couple, but it's not the huge action beats of the earlier books. So it's a slightly slower pace of tension building and stuff, and it's a different type of tension that builds at different times. There's not these huge pitched battles, but there is still violence and action and stuff, as you would expect for a fantasy epic, particularly one by Brandon. So it's a little bit of a slower pace than the earlier books, perhaps, and it sort of picks up over time, and you've got all these plot threads going on. And then they basically all of them except for one, basically sort of meet up at the end, they sort of split, and then they kind of all come to a nice conclusion. Some of them, and you kind of see the links between them, but nothing's resolved. In fact, a lot of stuff is left unresolved because, of course, there's one more book left in this arc of the Stormlight Archive. So basically, overall, I would say that this book starts really good and then becomes amazing. I would say that perhaps the last quarter of this book is really, really good. I think possibly some of the best stuff that Brandon's ever written. Of course, my favorite book in the series is still The Way of Kings, but this book gives it a very, very strong run for its money, and I think it is definitely stronger than Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. If you're wondering why I keep looking to my left, it's because there's this bee that's kind of walking around next to me, and I think it's not going to sting me, but if it does sting me, you'll hear the loud screech. Anyway, let's get into some spoilers here. So first of all, I just finished this book, so I just want to quickly jump into the end bit, which I understand is not exactly how chronology works, but what are you going to do, sue me? I found that the end of this book was so strong, particularly Kaladin, his little arc at the end of a book, swearing the fourth ideal and stuff, was really, really emotive stuff. The scene with Tien, his brother, I'm not the most emotional of people, but I got a little, I didn't tear up, but I just had a, a feeling where you just feel really overcome with emotion and stuff. I thought that was a really, really well done scene. It really showed Kaladin's, not his journey, but more specifically than that, I guess his journey to swearing that fourth ideal and what it means to him, And in retrospect, it's pretty obvious what that fourth ideal was, but that's, I guess, how good storytelling works, right? Where it's obvious in hindsight, but actually you didn't pick it up, or at least I didn't pick it up as I was getting to it. So yeah, the stuff with Kaladin, really, really good. This bee is approaching me. Okay, sorry about that. I've moved locations due to the bee approaching me at with a great degree of momentum. Anyway, so the Dalinar stuff in this book is really, really good. I really enjoy all of his interactions with the Stormfather. I find that to be a really good duo, a really good pairing, and it just brings a lot of interest because the Stormfather is this really he's not human, right? And he's this very different character, and I always enjoy his interactions. So Dalinar, getting into his powers as a bondsmith, his interaction with Odium at the end, all of that, really, really cool. I will say that Wit shone a lot in this book, probably more than we've actually ever seen him in any other book. You really get a little bit of what's going on with Wit, particularly in the epilogue. The epilogue is quite interesting, where the new Odium takes, I'll get into that in a sec, but the new Odium takes some of Wit's memories. I really thought that was quite an interesting and very well done scene, where the scene just replays over itself again because Wit didn't remember it. I just thought that was really cool. I really think that this book as well, the previous books have been sort of people's book, they've been a book of a single character. How the first book was Kaladin's, second book was Shallan's, and the third book was Dalinar's. I think if this book didn't have the flashbacks that the previous ones did, but I think if it did, it would be Navani's book. And actually, to be fair, there were a few flashbacks for Navani as well. So yeah, definitely, the character of Navani really comes into her own here. And we really get to see her, insecurities explored and who she is as a person explored. We really get this conflict where she's like, I'm a scholar, I'm not a scholar, I'm competent and strong and effective, which is actually the case. She is actually competent and strong and effective. And that gets juxtaposed against how she feels about herself, her self-image of being the opposite of that, and she feels that she is not worthy and useless and stuff. And we just get to really see her develop as a character and finally sort of come into her own a little bit and really do some interesting the scholarship side of thing that Brandon included here. We got a lot of revelation about the magic system of this world, and also the Cosmere in general. But specifically, we get a lot about this world, about how the like rhythms and light and how it all works, which is really, really cool. I really like, because I really like how Brandon has a hard magic system, and that's become a little bit cliched, I guess, but it's true, it's a hard magic system, but I also like how he uses that to really give interest to the story, because I imagine that same scene with, like, Gandalf's powers from Lord of the Rings, it wouldn't really play very well, but for this magic system, it really works to explore it and understand it and sort of have it laid bare in like a scientific sense. And I really just enjoyed it. Basically, and I didn't really enjoy Navani too much in the previous books. I didn't mind her, but I really felt that this book did her justice and really allowed me to get into her head enough that I started to relate to her as a character and I started to appreciate her a lot more. Same thing with Yasna. We got not very many scenes of Yasna in this book, very few. I think maybe there was 2 or 3 Yasna chapters, but they were all really, really good, and really gave you some insight, particularly the one where she's in the battle, and she's like she wants to experience what her troops are experiencing so she can be a better commander, but by the same token, she's really not suited for battle, and she's just very out of her depth, which I think is cool as well for a character as put together as Yasna. So it was really, really cool to have those chapters, and I've really felt that we developed with her a bit. And like I said, with the wit stuff was cool, and obviously that works with a Yasna thing because they're in a relationship. It was really cool to just sort of see that like blossom, I guess, if you will. But mostly my favorite, as it has always been with the Stormlight Archive, is Kaladin. His arc through this book gets very dark at certain points. It starts dark and it stays dark for quite some time. But it's really, really nice to finally get a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for Kaladin at the end of this book. But just Kaladin's arc this whole time, the whole book really gripped me. His the mental illness exploration, I never really suffered from depression or anything myself, but I can imagine that as quite a good depiction of it, and quite a generous, considered depiction of it as well, where it doesn't depict it as easy or anything, but it shows perhaps a way out. Really, really well done, I think, by Brandon there. And according to his streams, he's had a whole bunch of beta readers and stuff who have suffered from depression and that sort of thing. So he thinks that he did it justice, and I would have to agree with my limited perspective on that. So I thought that was really cool. And like I said, the end of this book really hits quite hard. And it starts, I think, with Teft getting killed, who's been sort of like a stalwart of this series for quite some time. He's just like the guy who's there, you know? And he's almost, he almost feels like he can't be killed, you know what I mean? He's just like part of the scenery, you know, in a good way. And his character is so like ingrained in the series that when he died, I was just like, what? You can't do that. And finally, I used to be a sort of on the side of Moash redemption. You know, maybe Moash is not that bad, but finally I've tilted to the side of fuck Moash. You will perhaps see me posting on that subreddit at some point. But yeah, I was really like, when Teft died, I was like, whoa, okay, that's really you know, like kind of hits hard, because I guess it's so unexpected. I think that's what Brandon was going for a little bit there, where he was just like, you know, he's not pulling any punches. And Brandon doesn't deliberately write. There's some authors who I feel like deliberately write deaths and sad stuff for the sake of it. We're really trying to get into that grim dark. Brandon's not like that, but I guess what this proves is that if a story is going somewhere and someone needs to die, he'll happily kill them off, and he will, you know, he won't pull any punches in that way. So I thought that was really, really well done. The setting of this book was kind of interesting as well. We got to explore a little bit more of Roshar. We got Dalinar going around various different places. I thought that was quite cool. And we got to really understand Urithiru. I can't say it, but Urithiru. We got to really understand a lot. And it was really cool to see, I touched on this a little, or I talked about this a little bit with the Navani thing, but it was really cool to see her interactions with the sibling, you know, the Tower Spren. So I thought that was really interesting to understand another one of the Spren. Anything else that I've sort of run out of characters that I specifically want to talk. Oh, Adolin. I will say that I think that his arc, or sort of what he's up to in this book, is probably the weakest of all the arcs. Still interesting and still fun, and still in a unique, different setting and Shadesmar and stuff. But I feel like I lost a little bit of interest in the whole thing. With that said, though, I do really appreciate what Brandon did with Maya, you know, the Spren, where, you know, she said something and she felt that her sacrifice was being taken away from her for other people's gain, which I actually think is something that happens a lot in the real world, where people who are like heroes or war heroes and stuff, their legacy is tarnished a little bit by people using it to try and convince people of other more negative stuff. But that's just my own perspective. But I just thought that was a really interesting thing to include, and I really enjoyed that. But I will say that the Adolin thing dragged a little bit Shalon, on the other hand, I felt was a little bit stronger, and I really appreciated finally getting some answers. I suspected this was one of those things where I actually had been suspecting it for a while, that the whole Shardblade thing that she had when she was a kid wasn't actually pattern. So it didn't come as too big of a reveal to me when it turned out that it was that, like, she'd killed his friend in the past, and that was like the big deal. But it was still cool to have it confirmed, and still cool to see. So I thought that Shalon was, and in the past I've not really liked Shalon, particularly in Words of Radiance. I was not a big fan of her character, but I felt that she was a lot stronger in this book, and I think that Adolin plays off her really well. So I felt that worked quite well. Overall, I think that this book was possibly Brandon's, like, it's definitely in his top 3 books he's ever written. I think that some of the Mistborn books, I can never decide on my favorite of the first 3 Mistborn. One of them is a 10 out of 10 book. I can just, on any different day, I can tell you which one. So one of those, Way of Kings, and this book, I would say, are his strongest books. So yeah, really, really enjoyed it. I would strongly recommend it, and I would strongly recommend it. Even if because I was in a boat where Words of Radiance and Oathbringer I felt were a little bit weak, and I know a lot of people enjoyed them, but for me, I didn't really get into them so much. I really enjoyed the flashbacks in Oathbringer, but the actual, like, what was happening didn't really compel me that much. But I still decided to pick up this book because I trust Brandon a lot, and as it turned out, that trust was justified. So I guess what I'm meaning by this is that even if you are a sort of person who was a bit like me, who felt that the series was flagging a little bit, definitely pick up this book, and you will be very pleasantly surprised, because this is a very, 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 very put together, well-written book. I should just quickly touch on before I finish here. I totally missed out on Venli, character of Venli. She is good. I was worried that, because she's kind of introduced as almost like a new character in the sense of having a perspective character, and I was kind of worried that I'd get pretty bored, new character. I just want to get back to the old characters, because that does happen in the series. But I really felt that it was done well, and she was interesting enough, and there was enough new information revealed through her chapters and such, that I was never bored. But I will say that it was a little bit weak, and a lot of the time when it did come up, one of her chapters did come up, I was like, damn, I wish it was someone else. But with that said, it wasn't bad, and it wasn't not nearly as bad as I thought it might be when I was told that she would be a perspective character. So something to keep in mind. Definitely, I think, one of the weaker storylines in this book, but still really, really good. And her chapters she doesn't have tons. She does have a few chapters, but it's not like overwhelming, so you never feel too bogged down with her. So yeah, overall, really, really solid book. I would give it sort of 8.5, 9 out of 10 territory, and I would strongly recommend picking it up. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a great day. If you're still around, if you're still watching, you might be interested to know that I'm currently listening to Elantris, so that'll probably be my next review, and then I've also got The Hope of Elantris, which I will also be reviewing after I finish that as well. So yeah, hopefully you'll see those videos sometime soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Season Baji!